Hey, I wanted to talk today about where ideas come from for me. I've been talking a lot about idea generation and where they come from and why go with certain things and then how to set them out. So I thought I'd just start with talking about um, what constitutes an idea and how do I use them. As a game developer, I'm relatively prolific. And a lot of my work tends to be quite light, but some of it isn't. Games like Family and Rivals have, fairly deep subject matter, and a lot of thought went into them. But something that's kind of happened at the start of almost all of them is there's been a certain kind of idea, and I think this idea has a few qualities which I don't necessarily share with all game developers. Like I have a certain set of standards that I attach to ideas, and they kind of need to have these things. And this goes back to being a songwriter, because before I was making games, I was a songwriter for 20 years in various forms. And to me, music is the most kind of immediate way of idea generation. Something can happen, and it either works or it doesn't. And it's not necessarily got to do with thinking it through. Things can happen that are beyond your control or disconnect you in some ways from your kind of personal identity bit of the process, and suddenly there's something there in front of you which is demanding to be seen. And I still find that that's the same with games, that there's the idea of a granule of something extremely potent at the center of an idea. And what I always say is that I like to be able to see all the way through an idea. So it used to be when I started writing songs, I found it tremendously difficult and I had to really, really work them. And eventually I got to a stage when I was older that when an idea came and it was really clear, I could just see all the way from the beginning to the end. Even if it was just a little hook, I could see how it was going to fit and I could understand the structure of it within the song. And thus I was able to build a song around it. And so when I say see all the way to the end of it, that's kind of what I mean. But this is also very much bound up with the medium itself and the constraint of the medium. Now, this might differ from some other creators, but I tend not to have a purely thematic or purely emotional approach to games. Yes, there's certainly a lot of that, and I've certainly put some mechanics and ideas into games which are not necessarily the most common things that you would come across. But it's still very much within the medium. I tend not to do what I'd call dancing about architecture. And there are certainly ideas that I think are good ideas, but I also recognize are not necessarily video game ideas. For instance, I have a board game ideas. I had an idea for what I thought would be a really good sitcom about musicians who work in old people's homes called Golden Years. But I'm not tempted to turn that necessarily into sort of an RPG or a puzzle game or anything like that, because I realize that understanding the constraints of a medium and exploring those constraints is really part of the competence of working in a medium at all. And the idea that you can simply turn any subject matter in any way, context free, into a piece of art is not true. You can actually do a great deal, and I'm not drawing a hard line in the sand and saying video games are this good for this and not good for that. But what I'm saying is understanding the way that a medium kind of interacts with people is core to being competent in it. TV is good for some things, film is good for some things. It's about exploring that contextually and shaping it to what you want. So for me, an idea is something, a grain in which encapsulates the whole and also works very much in the medium. And this is what gives it what I call legs, right? And I think everyone's experienced that idea when they have an idea which suddenly they can see all the possibilities of. So it's not, I want this, I want that. It's, this thing could work and this is how I can do it. And then you shut up and build it as quickly as possible in order to make it real. Which is why, as a songwriter, I always used to, scribble stuff down and take notes on my phone. It's because you want to externalize that and test it in the environment as quickly as possible and see if it's any good or not, and see if it's going to sort of die on impact, as it were, or if it's going to survive and you get a good feel. And I think you generally know pretty quickly with this stuff. And the only other thing which I think is, ties into this is this idea that a want is not an idea. And I have this kind of phrase I sometimes say, which is, opinions are like candles and ideas are like searchlights. The ideas illuminate the darkness in a way that opinions do, but kind of below opinions is wants, I think, as well, which is, I really want to do this, I really want to do that. And I think that as a creator, something that I've had to realize is that I can't put my wants will come out one way or another through the things that I create, but I can't sit down wanting to create something. It has to come, and the only way that it can come is through being extremely relaxed. And so now what I mostly spend my time doing is trying to relax around ideas and let them evolve in a more open way, rather than shaping them by what I emotionally want, which is often shaped by social status, being able to tell people things, because that's usually a sign that an idea is either not going to work or I'm not in a place to be able to allow it to breathe. So yeah, I mean, this is just a few kind of fairly open-ended thoughts about my creative process. I want an idea to do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I want it to work in the medium, and I want it to be a little bit separate to me and not just be a composite of my wants. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.